The silk sheets were cool against Laura's skin as she watched Jin button his black shirt in the pre-dawn darkness of his penthouse. Seoul glittered below them, 40 stories of distance between this gilded cage and the streets where real life happened. "I enjoyed the night with you," Jin said, his accent thick but practiced. He didn't turn around. Laura stretched languidly, letting the sheet slip just enough. Just the night. Now he turned. At 45, Jin carried his power in the set of his jaw, the silver threading his temples, the way he moved through space like he owned it. Because he did. The Myeongdong district, the ports, half the politicians in the National Assembly, all his. "Careful," he said softly. "Women who want more than I offer tend to disappear." She laughed, low and genuine. "Is that what happened to the last one?" His eyes narrowed. Most people didn't ask about Minjun's widow. "You've done research." "I do my homework on all my clients." Laura rose, wrapping the sheet around herself. "Though you're the first who's tried to threaten me afterward, usually they just pay." Jin crossed the room in 3 strides, gripping her chin. Not hard enough to hurt, but firm enough to make his point. "You're not in Nairobi anymore, Laura, or Lagos, or wherever you learned to be so fearless." "Addis Ababa," she corrected, not flinching. "And I learned fearlessness in Brussels, actually. International law degree, specialized in international criminal prosecution and money laundering." She smiled at the flicker in his expression. "But that doesn't pay as well as being underestimated." He released her, intrigued despite himself. "Law degree, criminal prosecution." "Relax, Jin. I left that life behind. Turns out the UN doesn't pay enough to cover my mother's medical bills. You, however," she gestured at the penthouse, the city, everything, "you pay very well." "What does your mother have?" The question surprised her. "Why do you care?" "I don't." He poured 2 glasses of whiskey despite the hour. "But I like to know the leverage points of people in my orbit. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer, experimental treatment in Germany, 300,000 euros, give or take." She took the offered glass. "I need about 6 more months of nights like this to cover it." Jin studied her over the rim of his glass. 25 and already this calculating, this composed. Most people who entered his world did so through violence or desperation. She'd chosen it with her eyes open. "What if I offered you something else?" "I don't do drugs, I don't traffic people, and I don't kill." Her voice was steel wrapped in velvet. "Not that. I need someone smart, someone nobody would suspect, someone who understands how laws work so she knows exactly how to break them." He set down his glass. "My organization is expanding into East Africa, Mombasa, Dar es Salaam, Kampala, but I don't speak the language, any of them, and my men," he gestured dismissively, "they think Africa is one country. And you think I'm qualified because I'm African. I think you're qualified because you walked into my club 6 months ago, identified my 3 security blind spots within an hour, and when my men tried to intimidate you, you told them in perfect Korean that you'd sue them for sexual harassment and file a complaint with the Financial Services Commission about the money laundering you'd noticed in the VIP room." He smiled for the first time that night. "Then you asked to see the owner." Laura remembered. She'd expected to be thrown out or worse. Instead, she'd been brought to Jin's private table, where he'd sat surrounded by men with dead eyes and expensive suits. "You were testing me even then." "I test everyone, most fail." He refilled her glass. "You passed." "What's the catch?" "The catch is you belong to me, exclusively. No other clients, no other life. You become part of my household, my organization." "Your mistress?" "My business partner who I occasionally fuck," he shrugged. "Semantics." "And if I say no?" "Then you leave here with $20,000 and we never see each other again." He walked to the window, hands clasped behind his back. "But we both know you're going to say yes." Laura hated that he was right. She needed the money, needed it desperately enough that she'd crossed lines she'd sworn she never would. 6 months ago, she'd been reviewing cases at the International Criminal Court. Now she was naked in a crime lord's penthouse, negotiating her soul's price. But working for Jin, really working for him, that was a different line entirely. That was collaboration, complicity. One condition, she said finally. My mother never knows. As far as she's concerned, I work in import-export consulting. That's technically true. Jin. Fine, he extended his hand. Welcome to the family, Laura. She shook it, feeling the calluses on his palm, the strength in his grip. His hands were surprisingly warm. What's my first assignment? There's a shipment arriving in Busan tomorrow night. Electronics, officially. Actually, it's classified military hardware headed for Nairobi, surveillance equipment, encrypted communications tech. I need you to meet the buyer, a man named Kiptu. He doesn't trust Koreans, but he might trust you. Might. He's Kalenjin, you're Oromo, different tribes, different countries, but you're both East African, and in his mind that creates a bond. Jin turned from the window. He's also extremely paranoid. 3 of my men have tried to meet with him. None succeeded. What happened to them? 2 are in Korean hospitals. 1 is still missing. Jin's expression remained neutral. Kiptu doesn't trust easily. Laura set down her glass. You know my ethnicity. What else do you know? I know everything about you, Laura Desta. I know you sent money to relatives in Addis every month until your mother got sick. I know you turned down a job at The Hague because your ex-boyfriend was there, and because you discovered he was selling information to the very war criminals you were prosecuting. I know you reported him, and I know he threatened your family. Jin stepped closer. I know you're much smarter than you let anyone see, and I know you're running from something more than just medical bills. Her heart hammered against her ribs. You had me investigated. 6 months ago, before you ever walked into my club. His smile was predatory. You think I let beautiful strangers criticize my security by accident? I invited you, Laura. I had someone slip you information about my club, about my schedule. I wanted to see what you'd do with it. The room tilted. Everything she'd thought was her choice, her initiative, her control. It had been his design all along. Why? Because I needed someone like you, someone smart, desperate, and angry enough to be useful. He touched her face, almost gently. Someone who could move between worlds without anyone suspecting. A former prosecutor working for a crime lord. No one would believe it, which makes you perfect. Laura should have been frightened, should have run. Instead, she felt something else entirely. Rage. Pure, clarifying rage. Jin had manipulated her, yes, but he'd also shown her what she was capable of when she stopped pretending to be good. When do we leave for Busan? We don't, you go alone. He handed her a phone, sleek and black. Encrypted, 1 contact me, use it if anything goes wrong. And if something goes very wrong? Jin's smile was cold. Then make sure you die before they make you talk. I have a reputation to protect. She should have walked away then. Should have taken the 20,000 and disappeared into the Seoul night. But Laura had never been good at should. I'll need a weapon. Glock or Beretta. Knife, less attention at customs, easier to explain, harder to trace. She met his eyes. I assume this meeting is taking place somewhere public. Jagalchi Fish Market, 2 a.m. Kiptu likes crowds even at odd hours. Easier to disappear if things go wrong. Jin walked to a panel in the wall, pressed his thumb to a scanner. The panel slid open, revealing an arsenal that would make a small army jealous. He selected a slender blade, Italian, the handle worn smooth with age and use. This was my father's. He killed 11 men with it. Laura tested the weight, the balance. Perfect. The blade whispered as it cut through air. What happened to him? Number 12 was better. Jin's expression hardened, a flash of old pain quickly masked. Don't be number 12, Laura. She slipped the knife into her purse. I don't plan to be. One more thing. Jin pulled out a leather portfolio, placed it on the table. Your new identity. Canadian passport, birth certificate, credit cards. Your name is Lara Desmond, import-export consultant from Toronto. You've been in Seoul for 3 months working with various tech companies. Laura opened the passport. The photo was hers. When had he taken it? The details were perfect, down to convincingly worn edges and customs stamps from a dozen countries. How long have you been planning this? 8 months, since I first learned about you. Jin poured himself another drink. I'm very patient when I want something. And what do you want, Jin? He looked at her then, really looked at her, and for a moment she saw past the crime lord, past the carefully constructed persona, to something raw and human underneath. I want to own East Africa's tech corridor. Every smartphone, every computer, every piece of surveillance equipment that moves through Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, I want a piece of it. His eyes glittered. And I want you to help me do it. Why? Because in 5 years, Africa will be the world's fastest-growing tech market. Because my competitors are still thinking small drugs, weapons, traditional crime, I'm thinking future. He finished his drink. And because you understand something they don't, the real power isn't in violence, it's in information. Laura's mind raced. He was right. If Jin could control the flow of technology and communications across East Africa, he wouldn't need weapons or drugs. He'd have something far more valuable, leverage over everyone using that technology. It was brilliant. It was terrifying. It was exactly the kind of challenge that made her feel alive. I'll do it, she said, but not for 6 months. I want a year's salary up front, enough to cover my mother's treatment and then some. Bold. You said you wanted someone useful. Useful doesn't come cheap. Jin laughed, genuine and surprised. Half up front, half when you successfully complete the Busan deal. He extended his hand again. Do we have an agreement? Laura shook his hand. We have an agreement. As she left, dawn breaking pink and gold over Seoul, Laura checked her phone. A bank notification glowed on the screen. $150,000 had been deposited into her account. Half up front, Jin kept his word. She wondered which would destroy her first, the cancer eating her mother alive or the choice she'd just made. But when she looked at that number, at the possibility of saving her mother's life, she knew the answer. She was already destroyed. This was just choosing which ruins to live in. The train to Busan cut through the Korean countryside like a silver bullet, rice paddies and mountains blurring past at 300 kilometers per hour. Laura sat in first class, studying the dossier Jin had given her on Kiptu. Real name, Daniel Kiptu Rodich. Age, 52. Former Kenyan military intelligence, dishonorably discharged in 2015 for reasons the file didn't specify. Now he ran what the file delicately called private security consulting across East Africa. In reality, he armed whoever paid him, rebel groups, politicians, corporations trying to intimidate competitors. The photo showed a lean man with tribal scars on his cheeks and eyes that had seen too much. He looked like someone who trusted no one and survived because of it. Laura's phone buzzed. Jin. Remember, he'll test you. Don't fail. She didn't bother responding. Instead, she pulled out a compact mirror and studied her reflection. Lara Desmond, Canadian consultant, looked back at her. Professional, unthreatening. Exactly the kind of woman men like Kiptu would underestimate. Perfect. The fish market at 2 a.m. was busier than she expected. Fishermen hauled crates of squid and mackerel. Auctioneers shouted prices in rapid Korean. Tourists with cameras wandered through looking for adventure. The air smelled of salt and diesel and something indefinably ancient, the ocean giving up its dead. Laura spotted Kiptu immediately. He sat at a plastic table outside a pajangmacha tent, eating grilled fish with his fingers. 2 men flanked him, trying to look casual and failing. Bodyguards. She approached slowly, hands visible, body language open, non-threatening. Mr. Kiptu, I'm Lara Desmond. We have a mutual friend. He didn't look up, just kept eating. I have no friends, only business associates. Then we're associates. She sat down without invitation. Bold move, but Kiptu would respect strength more than deference. Jin sent me to discuss your order. Now he looked at her. His eyes were flat, calculating. Jin sends a woman, that's either very smart or very insulting. Smart women attract less attention, especially foreign women. She signaled the vendor, ordered soju in perfect Korean. And I speak Swahili. You want to discuss business in a language your bodyguards don't understand. Something flickered in Kiptu's expression. Surprise, maybe, or respect. Anazungumza Kiswahili. You speak Swahili. Ndio, pia ninazungumza Oromo na Kiamhari. Yes, I also speak Oromo and Amharic. She switched back to English. I grew up in Addis, worked in Nairobi for 2 years. Doing what? Legal work, international courts, very boring. She sipped her soju. This is more interesting. Kiptu studied her for a long moment, then dismissed his bodyguards with a gesture. They moved to a nearby table, close enough to intervene but far enough to not hear. You worked for the ICC, his voice dropped. Prosecuting who? People who did what you do, Mr. Kiptu, warlords, arms dealers, men who thought they were above the law. She met his eyes. But I learned something there. The law doesn't care about justice. It cares about politics. The powerful never face consequences. Only their soldiers do. So you switched sides. I switched to reality. She leaned forward. Jin tells me you need surveillance equipment, military grade. I can get you encrypted communications devices, drone detection systems, thermal imaging. Top of the line. But first, I need to know what you're protecting. That's not your concern. It absolutely is. If you're protecting something the Americans care about, this equipment will have trackers. If you're protecting something the Chinese care about, it'll have backdoors. I need to know who to buy from. She paused. Unless you want your enemies listening to every word you say. Kiptu's jaw tightened. She'd hit a nerve. There's a mining operation. Kaltan, in eastern DRC near the Rwandan border. He spoke carefully, weighing each word. My client wants security, real security, not the UN peacekeepers who run when shots are fired. Coltan, critical mineral for smartphones and computers. Worth killing for, worth dying for. Who's your client? A businessman, Chinese. He pays well and asks few questions. Laura's mind raced. A Chinese businessman mining coltan in DRC through a Kenyan middleman using Korean surveillance tech. The supply chain of modern conflict, wrapped in corporate speak and shell companies. How many men are you running security for? 200, maybe more if the operation expands. You'll need a mobile communications hub, not individual devices. Something that can create a secure network across 50 kilometers. Jin can provide that, but it won't be cheap. How much? $2 million, half up front, half on delivery. Kiptu laughed, sharp and bitter. Jin thinks I'm stupid. That equipment is worth maybe 800,000. The equipment is, but the customization, the training, the fact that Jin's people will install it and maintain it without asking questions about what you're protecting, that's worth the premium. Laura leaned back. Plus, you're not just buying equipment, you're buying silence. No one will know where it came from or where it went. And if I say no, then you find another supplier. But you've already burned through 3 Korean contacts, Mr. Kiptu. How many more tries do you think you have before Jin decides you're more trouble than you're worth? The threat hung in the salt air between them. Kiptu's hand moved toward his jacket. Laura's fingers found the knife in her purse, Jin's father's blade. She didn't draw it, just rested her hand on the handle. I should kill you for that, Kiptu said softly. You could try, but then you'd never get your equipment, and Jin would hunt you across 3 continents. She smiled, all teeth. Or you could accept that I'm right. You need this deal more than we do. For a long moment, they stared at each other. 2 predators assessing, calculating, deciding whether to fight or cooperate. Then Kiptu laughed, genuine this time. You have shuja, courage. He signaled his bodyguards back. 1.5 million, that's my final offer. 1.8, and Jin throws in 6 months of technical support. 1.6, no support, my people can handle it. 1.7, 3 months support, take it or leave it. Kiptu extended his hand. Deal. They shook. His grip was iron, testing her. She matched it, didn't flinch. The equipment will be ready in 2 weeks. Delivery to Mombasa, then overland to your site. Laura pulled out a burner phone, pre-programmed with a single encrypted number. Use this to coordinate with Jin's logistics team. Never use your regular phone. I'm not an amateur. I know, But Jin is paranoid, and paranoia keeps people alive in our business. She stood. Pleasure doing business with you, Mr. Kiptu. Wait, he grabbed her wrist, not threatening but firm. Why does a woman with an ICC background work for someone like Jin? Same reason you work for Chinese businessmen who don't ask questions. She pulled free. We all have our prices. Mine just happened to be higher than I expected. She was 3 steps away when Kiptu called out, Your mother, the cancer, I hope the treatment works. Laura froze. Slowly she turned back. How do you? Jin isn't the only one who does research. I know who you are, Laura Destas. I know about Brussels, about The Hague, about the boyfriend who betrayed you. His smile was sad. I know you're not here because you want to be. You're here because you have no choice. Everyone has choices. No, everyone has circumstances. Choice is a luxury for people with options. He stood, dropped cash on the table. Be careful with Jin. Men like him don't have partners, they have assets. And when assets stop being useful... He didn't finish. He didn't need to. Laura watched him disappear into the market crowd, his bodyguards flanking him like shadows. Her hands were shaking. She pressed them flat against her thighs until they stilled. The train back to Seoul left at 4 a.m. She had 90 minutes to kill. She walked to the water's edge, watched the fishing boats bob in the darkness. The ocean stretched endlessly, indifferent to human schemes and suffering. It had been here before nations, before laws, before people invented reasons to hurt each other. It would be here after. Her phone buzzed. Jin. How did it go? Deal closed. 1.7 million. 3-month support. He'll coordinate delivery through the logistics team. Excellent. I knew I chose correctly. She almost threw the phone into the ocean. Almost. Instead, she typed, Kiptu knows who I am. He did background research. The response came immediately. I know. I wanted him to. Why? Because trust built on lies collapses eventually. Better he knows the truth now, that you're competent, desperate, and committed. That makes you predictable. Predictable is useful. Laura stared at the message. Jin had played her again. He'd known Kiptu would investigate, had probably wanted him to find her real identity. It made her look more legitimate, a fallen idealist turned pragmatist. The perfect cover story because it was true. She typed, One day you'll manipulate the wrong person. Perhaps, but not today. The train station was nearly empty at 4 a.m. Laura bought coffee from a vending machine, bitter and scalding, and settled into her first-class seat. The countryside blurred past in reverse, mountains and rice paddies rushing backward toward Seoul. She thought about Kiptu's warning, assets that stopped being useful. She'd seen enough at the ICC to know how that story ended. Witnesses who disappeared, informants found in rivers, people who became inconvenient. But she'd also learned something else at the ICC, how to document everything, how to build cases, how to create insurance. Laura pulled out her personal phone, not the encrypted one Jin had given her, but her real one, registered under a false name and routed through 3 different VPNs. She opened a secure cloud storage account and began typing. Date, current date. Location, Jagalchi Fish Market, Busan. Transaction, Korean technology supplier Jin, surname unknown, operates out of Seoul to Kenyan security contractor, Daniel Kiptu Rodich for Chinese mining operation in DRC. Value, 1.7 M USD. Purpose, secure communications network for Kaltan Mining Security Force, approx 200 personnel. She added everything she remembered. Names, amounts, locations, the kind of information prosecutors loved. The kind of information that could destroy Jin's entire operation if it fell into the right hands. Insurance. If Jin ever decided she was more liability than asset, this information would be her leverage, her guarantee of survival. The train pulled into Seoul Station as dawn broke over the city. Laura had been awake for 24 hours, had negotiated $1 million arms deal, and had just created evidence that could send her to prison for decades. She felt more alive than she had in years. Her phone buzzed. Jin again. Come to the penthouse. We need to discuss your next assignment. She typed back, "Give me 6 hours to sleep first." 4 hours. Time is money, and you've just proven your worth investing in. Laura smiled despite herself. She was trapped in Jin's web, yes, but she was also learning how to spin webs of her own. She hailed a taxi, gave the driver an address 3 blocks from her apartment. Basic security. Always assume someone's watching. As the taxi wound through Seoul's morning traffic, Laura's reflection stared back at her from the window. She barely recognized herself. 6 months ago, she'd been drowning in debt and despair. Now she was a criminal, a collaborator, a woman who brokered deals that would fuel conflicts half a world away. Her mother's treatment was paid for. That's what mattered. That's what she told herself, anyway. But as the taxi stopped and she walked the final 3 blocks to her apartment, Laura couldn't shake Kiptu's words. Everyone has circumstances. Choice is a luxury for people with options. She'd made her choice, or had her circumstances made it for her. In 4 hours, she'd be back in Jin's penthouse, learning what fresh hell he had planned. But for now, she had her small apartment, her narrow bed, and 4 hours to pretend she was still the person she'd been before. Before the night she'd enjoyed with a Korean Mafia boss changed everything. Before she'd discovered that destroying yourself could feel like freedom. Before she'd learned that the distance between law and crime was just one desperate decision. Laura locked her door, checked the windows, set 3 separate alarms. Then she collapsed into bed fully clothed and fell into dreams of fishing markets and blood-stained knives, and her mother's face when she'd learn where the money really came from. When she woke, Jin was calling. The next assignment was waiting. The next compromise. The next step down a path she could no longer see the end of. And somewhere in the darkness, Laura Distas smiled. 4 hours of sleep felt like 4 minutes. Laura woke to her phone vibrating insistently on the nightstand, Jin's name flashing on the screen. She let it ring twice more before answering, a small act of defiance that probably meant nothing to him but everything to her. "I'm awake," she said, her voice rough. "Good, car will be there in 30 minutes, don't be late," he hung up. No greeting, no pleasantries, just commands. Laura stared at the ceiling of her small apartment, so different from Jin's penthouse, and wondered how long before she stopped noticing the difference. How long before luxury and power became normal, expected, necessary. She showered quickly, the hot water failing to wash away the exhaustion or the memory of Kiptu's warning. Men like him don't have partners, they have assets. Her closet was a study in duality now. On one side, the conservative suits from her ICC days, grays and blacks, professional armor for courtrooms. On the other, the clothes Jin's money had bought, designer pieces that straddled the line between respectable and seductive, the kind of wardrobe that opened doors and distracted attention. She chose a charcoal pencil skirt, burgundy silk blouse, and black blazer, professional but with an edge. The knife, Jin's father's knife, went into a concealed pocket she'd had sewn into her new leather bag. She'd learned in Brussels, always be armed, even in places you think you're safe, especially in those places. The car was a black Mercedes with tinted windows. The driver didn't speak, didn't look at her in the rearview mirror. Just drove through Seoul's morning traffic with the efficiency of someone who'd made this route 1,000 times. Jin's building rose like a dark monolith in Gangnam. Laura had read once that Gangnam meant south of the river, the wealthy side, the powerful side. The side where men like Jin built their empires on the bones of people who'd trusted them. The elevator to the penthouse required a keycard and fingerprint scan. Security had tripled since her first visit. She wondered if that was because of her, or if Jin was always this paranoid. He was waiting in his office, a room she hadn't seen before. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Seoul, 3 computer monitors displayed stock tickers and encrypted messages, and a wall of mahogany shelves held leather-bound books in Korean, English, Chinese, and Japanese. Jin sat behind a massive desk, wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than most people's cars. "You're 2 minutes late," he said without looking up from his screens. "Traffic." That's why I said 30 minutes instead of 28. Now he looked at her, and his expression was unreadable. How was Busan? Successful. Kiptu agreed to 1.7 million. He'll coordinate with your logistics team using the encrypted phone. He wants delivery to Mombasa in 2 weeks. I know, he already contacted my people. Jin stood, walked to a bar cart, poured 2 glasses of whiskey despite the early hour. He also called me directly, said you were impressive, fearless, intelligent. He handed her a glass. He also said you're dangerous. Is that a problem? On the contrary, dangerous is useful. Dangerous keeps people honest. Jin sipped his whiskey. He warned you about me, didn't he? Laura shouldn't have been surprised. Jin seemed to know everything. He said you don't have partners, only assets. He's right. Jin's smile was sharp. But assets can become partners if they prove valuable enough. The question is, how valuable are you planning to become? Valuable enough that you can't afford to lose me. Ambitious, I like that. He returned to his desk, pulled up a file on his computer. Your next assignment is more complex. There's a tech conference in Singapore next week. Southeast Asian Innovation Summit. Attendance is restricted, government officials, corporate executives, venture capitalists. The kind of people who decide which technologies get funding and which die in development. And you want me there because a Chinese company called Tianlong Enterprises will be unveiling a new cybersecurity platform. They're marketing it to African governments, Kenya, Nigeria, South Africa, Ethiopia. They claim it's unhackable, provides complete data security, protects against surveillance. Jin's expression darkened. They're lying. It has backdoors. Worse, it is a backdoor. The entire system is designed to feed data directly to Chinese intelligence. Every email, every phone call, every government document that passes through it goes straight to Beijing. He pulled up technical specifications that meant nothing to Laura. If African governments adopt this platform, China will have access to everything: military communications, economic planning, political strategies. And you care about African sovereignty now. I care about my business. If China controls African communications infrastructure, they control the market I'm trying to enter. They'll shut me out completely. Jin closed the file. I need you to go to Singapore, attend the summit, and steal Tianlong's presentation materials. Source code, technical specifications, client lists, everything. Laura set down her whiskey. You want me to commit corporate espionage? I want you to level the playing field. By stealing intellectual property from a Chinese tech giant. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. Do you know what happens to people who steal from Chinese state-backed companies? They disappear. Sometimes their families disappear too. Which is why you'll be very, very careful. Jin slid a folder across the desk. New identity. Your Dr. Sarah Chen, American-born cybersecurity consultant of mixed Chinese-African heritage. PhD from MIT, worked for 3 years at a Silicon Valley firm before going independent. You've been invited to speak on a panel about emerging markets and digital infrastructure. Laura opened the folder. The documentation was perfect: passport, business cards, even a fake LinkedIn profile with testimonials and connections. How long did this take to create? 6 weeks. I started building your cover before I ever approached you. Jin's smile was predatory. I told you, Laura, I'm very patient when I want something. You've been planning this for 6 weeks. Longer. I've been planning to enter the African tech market for 2 years. Finding you was the missing piece. He stood, walked to the window. China is colonizing Africa through technology. They're building the digital infrastructure, providing the platforms, creating the dependencies. In 20 years, Africa won't just be economically tied to China. It'll be technologically subservient. And the West doesn't care because they've written Africa off. But you care. I care about opportunity. Africa is the last frontier for real growth. Population boom, urbanization, mobile adoption rates off the charts. Whoever controls African tech in the next decade will be as powerful as whoever controlled American tech in the 1990s. Jin turned back to her. I want to be that person, and I need you to help me do it. Laura studied the folder, her mind racing. Corporate espionage was different from brokering arms deals. This was sophisticated, required technical knowledge, involved players far more dangerous than Kiptu and his mining operation. What's my cover for attending? How did Dr. Sarah Chen get an invitation? You were recommended by a Kenyan government official who's on our payroll. He suggested you as a panelist discussing African digital sovereignty, ironically appropriate, given the circumstances. Jin returned to his desk. The panel is the day before Tianlong's presentation. You'll establish credibility, network with attendees, and position yourself to access restricted areas during the conference. And how exactly am I supposed to steal encrypted files from a Chinese tech giant? Jin pulled a small device from his desk drawer, looked like a USB drive, but slightly larger. This is a network infiltrator. Plug it into any computer on Tianlong's network for 30 seconds, it'll clone their entire system. Wireless transfer to a secure server. You'll never touch the data directly. 30 seconds. That's assuming I can get to one of their computers, which will be in a restricted area, probably guarded. Which is why you'll seduce one of their engineers. Jin pulled up a photo on his screen. A young Chinese man, maybe 30, wearing glasses and an awkward smile. Li Wei, junior systems engineer at Tianlong. He's attending the conference, staying at the Raffles Hotel, room 2847. He has access to the presentation materials because he helped develop the platform. You want me to sleep with him? I want you to do whatever necessary to get access to his laptop. Jin's tone was matter of fact. If seduction works, use it. If friendship works, use that. If bribery works, use money. I don't care about the method. Only the results. Laura felt something cold settle in her chest. This was different from spending a night with Jin. That had been her choice, her agency, her decision to cross that line. This was Jin asking her to weaponize her body, to use intimacy as a tool of theft. And if I say no? Then I find someone else, and you go back to charging by the hour, hoping you can save your mother before the cancer wins. Jin's expression didn't change. But we both know you're not going to say no. He was right. God help her, he was right. What's my timeline? The conference starts in 5 days. You fly to Singapore tomorrow. That gives you time to establish your cover, prepare for the panel, and identify your approach to Li Wei. Jin slid another folder across the desk. Everything you need is here. Hotel reservation, conference credentials, panel talking points, background on key attendees. Laura opened the second folder. The detail was staggering, dossiers on dozens of conference attendees, maps of the venue, schedules, even suggested conversation starters for networking. Jin had thought of everything. You'll have support in Singapore, a team monitoring your movements, ready to extract you if things go wrong. Jin finished his whiskey. But understand this, Laura. If you're caught, we cannot acknowledge you. You'll be on your own. The best I can do is make sure your mother's treatment continues. How generous. I'm not generous, I'm practical. He stood, signaling the meeting was over. There's one more thing. Tianlong has ties to Chinese intelligence, but they also have ties to African criminal organizations. If they discover someone is stealing from them, they won't go to the police. They'll handle it themselves. Permanently. You're trying to scare me. I'm trying to make sure you understand the stakes. Jin walked to the door, opened it. You're not brokering a deal in a fish market anymore. You're entering a world where mistakes don't get second chances, where your value is measured by results and failure means disappearing. Laura gathered the folders, stood. Anything else? Yes. Jin's expression softened slightly, or maybe she imagined it. Be careful. You're more useful to me alive than dead. Again, how generous. I'll have the driver take you home. Pack light. Singapore is hot this time of year. He returned to his computer screens, dismissing her. Oh, and Laura, the bank transfer for the Busan deal should hit your account this afternoon. Another 150,000. Spend it wisely. The ride back to her apartment passed in a blur. Laura clutched the folders, her mind spinning with details, risks, and the creeping realization that she was in deeper than she'd ever intended. Back home, she opened her laptop and logged into her secure cloud storage, the one Jin didn't know about. She began documenting everything. The Singapore assignment, the Tianlong target, Li Wei's name and photo, the network infiltrator device. Insurance, documentation, evidence. If she was going to sell her soul, she was going to keep receipts. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Dr. Chen, looking forward to your panel discussion on digital sovereignty. Your perspective on African markets will be invaluable. See you in Singapore. Conference Organizing Committee. The performance was already beginning. Dr. Sarah Chen was coming to life, a ghost identity that would let Laura Destad do things she couldn't do under her own name. She thought about her mother in Germany fighting cancer, believing her daughter was a legitimate consultant. She thought about her younger self at The Hague, believing justice mattered, believing the law could change the world. That girl seemed like someone from another lifetime. Laura pulled out Jin's knife, tested its edge against her thumb. A thin line of red appeared. The blade was sharp. Everything in Jin's world was sharp, designed to cut, to penetrate, to wound. She was becoming sharp too. The question was whether she'd cut others or herself first. Her phone buzzed again. Jin, remember what I said about Li Wei, whatever necessary, I'll know if you hold back. Laura stared at the message for a long time. Then she began researching Li Wei, his background, his interests, his vulnerabilities. If she was going to seduce information out of him, she needed to know what would make him trust her. 3 hours later, she'd built a psychological profile. Li Wei was lonely, awkward with women, passionate about his work but underappreciated by his company. He posted on technical forums about feeling isolated. He'd been passed over for promotion twice. Perfect, she could work with that. She drafted an email from Dr. Sarah Chen's account to Li Wei, mentioning she'd read his paper on encryption protocols, was impressed by his work, and wondered if they might discuss African implementation challenges at the conference. Professional, flattering, innocent. The hook. She sent it before she could second-guess herself. 30 minutes later, Li Wei responded. He'd be honored to meet Dr. Chen, perhaps dinner the night before the Tianlong presentation. Laura stared at his eager reply and felt something die inside her, some last piece of the person she'd been. She typed back, "Dinner sounds perfect. I look forward to learning from you." The trap was set, the performance ready to begin. In 5 days, she'd fly to Singapore as someone else, seduce a lonely engineer, steal from a Chinese tech giant, and take another step down a road she could no longer see the end of. Her mother called that evening, voice weak but hopeful. "The doctors say the treatment is working. They're seeing improvement." "That's wonderful, Mom," Laura's voice cracked. "How's work? You sound tired." "Just busy. Big consulting project coming up. I'll be in Singapore next week." "My daughter, the international consultant." Her mother's pride was palpable. "I'm so proud of you, Laura, everything you've accomplished." "Thanks, Mom. I love you." "I love you too, sweetheart. Be safe." After she hung up, Laura sat in the darkness of her apartment and cried, not because of what she was becoming, but because her mother's life was worth it, worth every compromise, every line crossed, every piece of herself she sold. That's what she told herself, anyway. That's what she had to believe. Because the alternative, that she was destroying herself for nothing, that the cancer would win regardless, that she'd sacrificed her soul for a hope that might already be dead, was too terrible to contemplate. Her phone buzzed one more time. "Jin, the driver will pick you up at 6 a.m. tomorrow. Don't be late." Laura looked at the message, then at the knife on her table, then at her reflection in the darkened window. The woman looking back was a stranger. But she was a stranger who could save her mother. And that had to be enough.